So the Rebbe was explaining, we were doing Ois Gimel, the Rebbe was explaining that it is the Etzem HaNefesh, the Yechida of the Nefesh, which has the power of the Nitzutz Boire, dresses up in the Nivra, in the Yechida, which gives the person the ability to withstand the Avodas HaNisyonis. That's the level of Yechida. So the Rebbe is going to explain this also fits in with what the Medrash says, how Avraham began his service in recognizing Hashem. Gimel. B'zehu gam ki ma shemamshich b'hamaimer. And this is also this idea of the level of yichida which you work with in order to overcome the nisyonis. This is also that which he continues in the Maimer, the Tchilas Avodas Avram, Hoiso Hakoros Elikus, Me'inyone Oilom. That in the beginning, the start of Avram's service was to recognize Hashem from matters of the world. As the Rebbe will explain, that the world itself has in it dressed up godliness. That's the nitzutz boire, the spark of creator within the nitzutz nivra, which in the spark of the creation, the level of yichida. Ukidiisa b'medrash, like we find in the medrash. Moshul le'echot shehoya oiver mimokim lemokim. We can compare this. There was a person traveling from one place to another place. V'ro bira achas deilekes. He saw there was one big house, a palace that was lit up. Amar. So he said, Toimar shehabira zu b'lei manhig. Will you say that this palace doesn't have somebody leading it? Doesn't make sense. Hitzitz olav bal habira chulu. So then the owner of the bira gazed at him or gave him a look, which means, as he explains in the what's the metaphor chulukach, because our father Avram would say, can you say that this world has no leader? Hitzitz olav HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'amar lei. So Hashem gave a look at him, and he said to him, Ani hu Baal ha'olam. I am the master of the world. What does it mean that the Eibishter tells him, I am the master of the world? Yesh lefarish the ha'inyan dani hu Baal ha'olam shenizgal l'Avram. That I am the master of the world that was revealed to Avram, who inyan hanitzutz boira hamislabesh benitzutz nivra. That is the spark of the creator which dresses up in the spark of the nivra. That means that it was revealed to Avram the spark of the creator. That means that to the level of Yechida, shanitzutz nivra shaboy, the spark of created being, which is in Abraham, his level of Yechida. That's his Nitzus. The Nitzus Nivra is the level of Yechida. So in it, Mislabish HaNitzus Beira. That's where the spark of the Beira dresses up. Hu Inyan Yechida Shebenefesh. We're talking about that's the idea of Yechida Shebenefesh Kimvuk Vuer B'Beitz Chaim, as explained in Neis Chaim. And then V'Hakoras Elakus Zu, and this recognition of godliness, Pirsem Gamkein B'Chol Ha'olam, he publicized this also in all the world. So this recognition that he had from the world, that the Eibishter is a balabos of the world, that is what he publicized to the whole world. K'moshe Kosov. And like we say, Vayikra Shom B'Shem Hashem Kel Olam. He proclaimed over there Hashem, God of the world. So we say Al Tikra Vayikra. It is not that he called Ela Vayakri. He made others call, meaning he publicized and he told others about the Eberster. He told the others about the Eberster. So therefore, Sheikri Zeh B'chol Ha'olam Diyesh Balabayis Lebira Zu, he proclaimed this in all of the world, that there is a master to this palace, to the world, has a master, has an Eberster. So, meaning that he passed along, he publicized. And he publicized by saying, Kail Olam. Kail Olam means that the Eibishter and world are the same and not separate. It's not just that the Eibishter runs the world, controls the world, is in charge of the world, but the Eibishter is one with the world. There's nothing besides the Eibishter. As explained in many places, the special diuk, the language that it says Kail Olam, Veloy Kail Ha'olam. It doesn't say the Kail from the world, but Kail Olam. The Hainu, that means Loi Shelakusu Inyan Bifnei Atzmei. It's not that godliness is an entity by something separately. And the world is a separate, that would mean Kail Ha'olam. So he is the God of the world. But the world is separate. He's the God, but they're two separate matters. But Kail Olam means Elo Shelakus Moshe. That would mean if it says Kail Ha'olam, that is two separate, but the Eibishter rules and dominates the world. But what he told them was Kail Olam, Ki'im She'olam Ve'elakus Kulachad, that the world and godliness is really one. The Ein Oid Milvadi, there is nothing else besides Hashem. Oh. So this was the beginning of the Avodah of Avram Avinu, to publicize godliness. So what's the connection? Why does the Rebbe bring us down as a connection to the Avodah Sanisyonis? So it explains, V'zehu HaKesher, this is the connection, Ben HaKoras Elokus D'Avram L'Avodah Sanisyonis Shaloi, the recognition of godliness of Avraham to the service of the test that Avraham went through. He was with the Nisyonis, that was his Avodah. So what's the connection? Ki Avodah Sanisyonis hi al yidei mesiras nefesh mitzad yichida shebenefesh. The service of Nisyonis, of being able to serve Hashem by overcoming Nisyonis, that comes through the level of mesiras nefesh, that comes from the yichida of the nefesh. And this is also what he did in order to recognize godliness. Shezehu gamkin, because it came because of yichida is mashe mesiras nefesh d'Avraham lo hoyso ki mesiras nefesh de Rabbi Akiva. This wasn't like the mesiras nefesh of Rabbi Akiva. So Omar so Rabbi Akiva was saying, when will I have the opportunity and I will fulfill to show my Shem the love, even if he takes my life. So he was looking for Mesiras Nefesh. But Yechida, that's when there's a level, but Mesiras Nefesh that comes mitzad Yechida works differently. Ki'im, what was by Avraham? Shekol in Yonei Hoyo Lefarsim Elokus Yisbarach. Ba'olam. all what he wanted, what was his inyan, what was his idea, what did he do to publicize godliness in the world? Eloshim tzorich mesiras nefesh al zeh, hoye mochen lezeh. But if you needed mesiras nefesh, he was ready for this. So why, how was this avodah by Avram done? So Avram was a non-mitzias, a non-entity. So that means his Yechida Sheben Nefesh was what controlled him. That was meaning that he was bottled. V'hainu ki Avram Avinu olav hasholem lo hoya mitzias la'atzmei. He was not an entity by himself. As he says, V'anoichi afar v'efer. I'm sand and dust. He's no Metzias. Shezeu inyan ha-mesiras nefesh mitzad b'chinas yechida. So that is mesiras nefesh that comes to the level of yechida. Not even like Rabbi Akiva, who sees the maila of mesiras nefesh, but here it's not for mesiras nefesh. Here is for devotion to Hashem, for the mitzvahs. And if Torah mitzvahs require, Yechida kicks in and says, ready to do anything, even if it costs him his life. V'davke mitzad bitl zeh. And it's specifically because of this level of subjugation, boldly they take up a chigodl. That brings you to the greatest force. You get the greatest strength you get from being a totally not entity, a totally bottled Hashem. And so strong is the power of Avram, even though Avram was only one. The entire world was on one side, and he was on the other side. He had to take on the entire world. He was just one on the right side versus everyone. So Echad Avram, he was one, but he Yoresh Esaretz. He is the one that inherited the land, which means he was able to publicize Shepirsim Elokusi Yisbarach B'chol Yehoilam. He publicized his blessed godliness of the Eibishter in the whole world. Through this publicizing of godliness in the whole world and not caring about anything, and he needed the level of Yechida, the total bittul, to have that level of Mesiras Nefesh in publicizing it. That comes from the level of Yechida. And that way, that's the way you build the world, that the world should be a dwelling place for Hashem over here in this world. So, Memela, we see that the avodah of Avram, of publicizing godliness, is also associated with his avodah of nisyonis. Because just like nisyonis, the way you overcome it is with the etzem hanefesh, with the yechido. The same thing is to publicize godliness everywhere and to be with a strength to overcome the whole world. That was with the level of yechida, the nitzutz boire, which is in the nitzutz nivra. And that's the way Avram was able to build the world. That's the connection between the avodah of Avram, of publicizing godliness, and the avodah of Avram of nisyonis. Now, so v'hinei tam hadover shavedas hanisyonis yal yidei mesiras nefesh davke. So what is the reason? Why is the work of these nisyonis only through mesiras nefesh? And the Bayer Bahamaimer, so the Maimer explains, Kibinisoyen hanitzutz eleki muster v'nelam b'yesel. Because when we talk about a test, about a nisoyen, that is an area where godliness is very hidden and obscure. You don't see godliness at all. And the Rebbe is going to explain, the Maimer explains over there the difference between regular avodah of Torah mitzvahs and the avodah of nisyonos. That by Torah mitzvahs, even though there is challenges and you have to overcome, but over there you have to overcome the challenges that you have in the items that you want to be mevarer. But by nisyonos, you have to overcome the challenges within yourself. The difference between the service of birurim and the service of nisyonos. Ke'af shegam hanisyonos heim avodas habirurim shebishvila yordan neshama lamato. Because although also the test that the Eibishter gives somebody an avodah of having to deal with challenges, this is part of avodas habirurim. So when we talk about a general avodas habirurim, the neshama came down in order to overcome and to mevarer, that includes the avodas hanisyonos. That's part of why the neshama came down. But there because there is still a difference between them, between avodas habirurim specifically, which is done through Torah and mitzvahs, and avodas hanisyonos, which is a service that comes through overcoming challenges. The avodas habirurim, when we serve to sort out ha'isaskus im ha'madover ha'mevarer, you're occupied with the item that you are sorting out. K'moy. So take, for example, Michael Gashmi, Shanitzutzu Michael. If you take Hamizbar, so you take a physical food, the spark is in the food that is being sorted out. So you're dealing with an item that has a spark, a physical spark. And that's the food. The food has a spark in it, a godly spark. And to sort it out is by working with it. So what does it mean? You take the food, you make the bracha, you eat it l'shem shomayim, and you learn with it. So you are mevarer the food. And the same thing is true generally with needs of person. We call it, there's eating, physically food, but generally all needs of the person that you occupy yourself, they're also called achila, consumption. Basically everything that you can consume, everything you come in contact, anything you need is sort of called your food. And your engagement is with the item, with that which you're mevarer. As opposed to when we talk about a test, how is that sorted out? That's not through occupying yourself in the item. That's occupying yourself, working with yourself. The nisoyan is working on yourself, not working with the item, but working with yourself. So he explains this difference now. Inyan hu. So what's the idea here? The hine avodas habirurim hi bederech milchama. The service to sort things out is by way of a war. In other words, the item that you're sorting out, you have to struggle in order to elevate it to the right level. We find about the level of the struggle of Birurim, we say the Namo, which is bread, apum charbo lechel. You ate it by the mouth of the sword, meaning you have to battle. You battle the sword, and that's how you eat, meaning basically that you have to sort it out through a battle. Shazo al yidei hagdomas hatfila. What is the battle? What is the sword that you have to do before you eat? So that is the idea of davening. The davening, that's the battle. Where do we see that davening is called a battle? It's called a charba. As we say, becharbi v'kashti, when Yaakov was rebuking Shimon and Levi, he says, Asher lokachti miyad ha'emoidi. That when he took, not rebuking, that when he's giving Yosef, he says, I'm giving it to you because I took it becharbi v'kashti. Yaakov took it with his sword and with his bow. Where do we see Yaakov? So the Targum, uncle says, Bitzloisu ubibausi, with my prayer, because Yaakov prayed for them. They were all ganging up on Yaakov, all the people of the Shechem, the Amorim, they were all ganging up. So over there it says, the Targum uncle says, Becharbi Bekashti means with my prayer and with my request, which means my davening. So here you see that davening is called the sword. So the way to start the day, that in the Birurim, we should be able to be mevarer, we have to go with the sword, we have to have the milchama, we have to have the davening. As explained in many places, Be'inyan Birchas Krishma, it explains about the blessing of the Shema, Shehein Ha'akdoma L'Kriya Shema, which are a introduction and start off the Shema, the blessings of Shema, which is V'ahavta Koimer Klolosi in Atfila. That is generally the idea of davening, is to reach the level of love. So what do we do as an introduction? We say the blessings of Shema. Shehi hizboinenus b'shoyresh nefesh habahamis v'abirurim. So over there we talk about the angels, v'yifanim v'chayis hakodesh, and also, which means that's really the root of the nefesh habahamis, and to sort it out so that later on, this is the davening. Later on, we can face the Gashmis, the world, to actually do the Avedus Habirurim. And by this reflection in the root of the Nefesh Habahamis and the Birurim, that's the way you sort it out. That's why this is an Avodah in a way of war. The slapshus b'hamizbarer, to dress up in that which is being sorted out, which means shemizboinim v'shorsha v'aydei that you reflect on the root of the mizbarer and you sort them out. So therefore, that is called the derech milchama, by having to reflect on the source of this mizbarer in order to be mizbarer. Derech zo b'chlolus ha'avodah, the Torah mitzvahs. This is talking about the davening. Is talking about to be mevarer the nefesh habahamis, and same thing is generally the avodah of Torah mitzvah. Shehi ayidei hamilchamo sheadei milchamo ima yetzer hara. That's waging a war with the yetzer hara. Shetzorich litoin. You need to argue. You need to oisteinen sich. You need to argue your case, belilchem imay, and to wage war with him, with the Yetzer Hara, b'chol minei tachsisim milchama, with all kinds of tactics of war. Ubizbonus become a drochem echletnatzchoy, and reflect in many ways how to win, how to be victorious over the Yetzer Hara. So this is all the level of Torah mitzvahs in generally, and the davening. It's all war, it's all battling the other side. As opposed to when we talk about the idea of these tests, a series of tests, when it comes to the test, the service with them is not by elevating them. Ki'im b'derech dechiyu bitl, by pushing it and nullifying, by just ignoring it and pushing it. The Rebbe will bring later on the example. Avraham Avinu, he went to be Mekayim. He has a Nisoyan. The Eibishter told him to take his son and bring him on the Akedah. And then there was created a barrier. There was water. He couldn't make it there. And then once he went into the water, it disappeared. The way to deal with Nisyonis is by pushing and nullifying and not considering. As the Rebbe will also talk about, that the Frierdiker Rebbe's approach, Tmuz, his approach to all those who caused him all these problems, not only physically that they arrested him, the main problem was that they didn't allow for the spreading of Yiddishkeit, because while he was in prison, he couldn't do his work that he was doing. So how did he deal with them? He dealt them by pushing away and nullifying them and not considering them to anything. So basically, this yoyness, you gotta just push away, you gotta knock him down, and you're not elevating anything. By Torah mitzvahs, when you are mevarer, is to deal with the items that you are mevarer and elevate them. This is similar to the difference between the positive mitzvahs, which you're doing something, and the prohibition. That is similar to the difference within mitzvahs itself. And the difference between the positive mitzvah and the prohibition. The mitzvahs say in yonam asiyo pula. The positive mitzvah, what is a mitzvah, is doing something, an act. Bahainu, and that is shemis asik im hadover shaboy mekayim hamitzvah, that he occupies himself with the item with which he's doing the mitzvah. Mitun inyan un in them inyan, with the item and in the item, which means you do the mitzvahs by doing the mitzvah and in the mitzvah. Abo mitzvahs loisas, but how do you fulfill a loisas? You don't do anything. The opposite, it's not doing. In yonam surmeira, their idea is to turn from bad, to turn away. Shasor min hara, that he removes from the bad, and he pushes it away. And a similar idea, the Rebbe says, is nisyonis, is not elevation, but pushing away. But the Rebbe is going to explain now in Nois Hey that this is still different than Loisasa, because they're both connected to something of doing or not doing. It's either you do or you don't do. So therefore, all mitzvahs are considered connected to the item by doing it or not doing it. But when we come to Avedis Hanisyonis, so over there it's you're not doing it. There's no entity that you're not doing. There is no entity to begin with, as we're going to learn that when it comes to Avedis Hanisyonis, the whole object that seems to be in the way of Torah mitzvahs turns out not to be an object. It's not really interfering. And therefore, the way to deal with it is by yourself. And as the Rebbe will bring out, that was the way the Frierdiker Rebbe dealt with the people, with his incarceration, with the people that did him totally. We shall continue tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you very much.